Welcome everyone to the Wednesday night live show. We are back for another show. No trivia tonight. Actually, Matt would have had fun with the trivia show.
I think he would have. I think, yeah.
I love trivia.
Yeah, good. That was a blast.
The men prevailed. The men beat the dolls. So yeah, it was a close one there for a little bit, but the guys somehow, some way pulled it through and ended up winning.
It out. I leaned on the stoner in the bottom left corner to go ahead and pull us through.
You guys were cheating and Googling, weren't you?
Matt, you're not supposed to reveal our secrets.
Matt, it was looking really bad. The girls pulled away, and I was just like, "Oh fuck, these guys are going down. They're going down bad."
We were getting smoked for a while. It did look kind of glim there for a minute.
Well, as everyone can notice, Matt is joining us tonight. Yeah, Matt is our special guest tonight, and he is going to share. Are you okay with sharing your new role? We're going to talk a little bit about that, if that's okay with you. Sure. Yeah, perfect. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about that and some advocacy as well. Tim is here with us, and Paul, and no Allie tonight. Allie is taking care of some business. She won't make it with us. Paul's fucking always eating during our show.
I know he's making me hungry.
Is that kangaroo meat tonight? Are we eating kangaroo meat? No,
it's not crocodile. It's not kangaroo. It's not gator. It's none of the above.
Scorpion, spider.
It's probably pimento loaf. That's exactly.
If your sandwich were alive, could it kill you?
No.
Okay, then you're eating the normal sandwich then. You're not eating any exotic meats that are available to you people there in Australia.
You're letting us down though, Paul. You know, you need to fit the stereotype.
Exactly.
Yeah, all right. Well, next week I'll make sure that I go out and I get some kangaroo, right?
Okay, there you go.
And I'll make kangaroo burgers, and I'll sit here and munch on a kangaroo burger and piss everyone right off.
There you gotta wear like a cowboy hat, or
big fucking knife, big fucking crocodile Dundee knife.
Yeah, it needs like a crocodile Dundee Outback hat while you're doing it.
Put another shrimp on the bar, mate.
I'm sorry. Fuck off. That was Paul Hogan actually that put another shrimp on the barbie.
Yeah. So Timmy, how's your week going, buddy?
Same, just busy with work. Same old. But I have to admit, I found out that vape tools come in handy for lots of things outside of just the vaping spectrum. Yeah. So my latest addiction now, and I know everybody's seen them. You know, you see them on like Amazon and all that stuff, but I'm totally now addicted to those like U-Gears and Wood Trick and rocker models, those little wood models that kind of look like a puzzle, but they're printed on wood sheets, and then you pop out all the pieces, and you got to carefully put that shit together. Otherwise you break half of it before you get to the end. But I found out that like I sat at my little vape table to build the guitar and amp that I put together last weekend. And like every vape tool outside ratcheting, like Allen wrench thing came in handy for like tweezers to hold the little tiny pieces and just
I use
everything.
Vape tools all the time around the house. Like when you need that, something small or like to pry or just a little tiny screwdriver or whatever. So the tweezers are great for a lot of things.
Yeah, there you go. So that was the second of the two musical instrument ones that interested me. So you had to build the amp separate from the guitar, and then the platform was part of it. But this one, I actually had to put strings on the guitar. There's like little wires that make the string. And it's got everything, dude. It's got the bridge. It's got the whammy bar. I had to put the pickups in it. I had to put all the volume knobs on the amp. But the hardest part was see the patch cord that goes from the guitar to the amp, the black one, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's a thicker wire, right? And so rather than you just sticking it like in a hole and calling it a day, it's actually mounted inside the gut of those two things. So at one point, you have to finish building the guitar while you're permanently attached to that amplifier. Like, because once the wire's locked in, you can't. So yeah, so it's fun. They're fun. They're definitely not for kids.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you got to have a lot of patience, man, especially with those little pieces like that. And you can't fuck up, because if you do, you're done.
Yeah, well, I'll just, for anybody interested in doing those things, there's cars, trucks, tanks, Rube Goldberg type machines. You can do all kinds of stuff.
Nice.
they do give you spares, so they recognize that there are some pretty bad.
fucking
Probably going to
fucking sausage fingers.
so they give you a couple extras just in case. Anyway,
Oh, that's cool. Cool little hobby.
You guys hear me sniffing and maybe a sneeze here and there? Like I'm just getting over the flu. Like it's lingering. Like I feel fine, but I'm still.
Yeah,
that's okay. That's okay.
yeah. You can't infect us through the radio waves. So
you never know.
I just didn't want anybody to think I was like doing coke.
It's
weird. I keep like doing
you got any more of that, Matt? You got any more of that? No?
It's the new virus, the internet virus. Paul, how's your week going, buddy?
Well, today's a public holiday. It's Australia Day, so I'm just relaxing.
Happy Australia Day.
Happy
Australia what is that equivalent to our holiday? Is that like 4th of July?
No. Australia Day goes all the way back to when Captain Cook and the rest of the clowns from the UK came over here and decided to call Australia a British colony. That's what it's all about. But I don't celebrate it because of the problems here with the Aboriginals and the Torres Strait Islanders. They just walked in here
imperial kind of thing. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I
don't follow it at all.
I
take my happy Australia Day back. Then I was just trying to.
Yeah. It's cool. You like everyone. All you can smell from about 9 o'clock in the morning on Australia Day around here is just barbecues. Like there's. Nice. I've got like 30 different smells coming through my window right now. That's why I had to make a sandwich because I've got someone that's got lamb on the barbecue. There's someone doing like not little pieces of lamb,
like the whole fucking lamb,
a whole lamb spit roast that's going on next door, and that's just wafting through here with the charcoal smoke and everything. And I'm just like, oh fuck this,
damn.
And then over from there, they've been up since early this morning. They've got like ducks and like butts of beef and stuff on another rotisserie that's over there. And then these guys, the Lebanese people next door, I don't know what the hell they're cooking, but I'm going to have to knock on their fence and say, hang on, I want some of that. That smells really good.
Yeah, if you have to smell it all day, it's only fair that you get fed. Just go over there with a couple pieces of bread and say, fill my sandwich.
Just go over there with 2 slices of bread to your neighbor's house, dude.
Go over there like the meat crackhead that you are, drooling.
I am. I'm bad when it comes to meat and seafood. And then the guys behind, I know what they're up to. They're making... because they're Indian, so they're making fish curries and things like that, and I can smell that coming through the kitchen window, and I'm just going, "Oh fuck!"
Hold on, I'm on Delta's website right now. I'm trying to catch a flight.
And Paul's eating a spam sandwich.
No, that was triple smoked ham. You asked.
Okay. Matt, how's your week going?
Not too bad. Like I said, I'm just getting over. Our whole house, well, except for Vanessa, had influenza A, and like the kids had it towards the end of December, and then I got sick like right around New Year's, and it just lasted. Like I thought I was better after a couple days, and then it came back, and like just you don't heal as fast. But it's their fault. Once the kids are out of the house, I bet you I'm never going to get sick because anytime I do get sick now, it's them bringing it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been sick since all my kids left, but yeah, I get the grandkids come in over and they'll have like a little runny nose and they want a hug, and I'm just like, nope, go over there.
Pressure wash it first.
You still getting some snow over there?
Yeah, it's still been pretty cold. We got more snow this winter than we've gotten in the last few winters, which is nice. Because if it's going to be cold, like you might as well have snow, I think. It's it's like today it went above freezing for a couple hours, like went up to 34, but I mean it's been right around like high 20s.
Nope.
Well, see, that's not that bad to me. Like high 20s isn't too bad. You could still be outside for like a 30-minute period of walking your dog or whatever. But like when it gets down to like the single digits or even goes negative and you have to go out and plow your driveway, I mean, it's painful to breathe. Like your lungs hurt afterwards.
Yeah, your ears are hurting and everything.
Yeah.
Timmy, say hello
Yeah.
to everybody.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the non-trivia show, Wednesday Night Live. Always great to see everybody back. I see a bunch of familiar faces. Let's do the romper room. I see thing. Anybody remembers romper room? Maybe just us old guys.
Yeah.
She had the magic magnifying glass or whatever the fuck.
Tim's always got to fucking date us.
You know what though? I feel like everything pulls full circle. So if you're gonna resurrect stuff, you resurrect cool stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right? That's good memories. YouTube romper room, folks, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So we got Mallory in the chat. Good to see you, Mallory. Always first. Mallory is always first. Pam Spraggins, great to see you. Always. Hold on, I moused over somebody. Addie Tooney. Addie Tooney and his old. Good to see you, Addie. Let's see. Got some repeats. Prof Millicky in the house. What's up, Prof? How you doing? Mr. Michael Redfern. Always enjoy seeing you here. I feel like every time I say his name, it brings back memories of Australia. You know why, Paul? Because I had to take the train to Redfern all the time because I had friends that lived in Redfern. So that's his name. The smells of Australia come rushing back. Jeff Danny Boy, good to see you. How are you, sir? You weren't here last week. Good to see you back. So I know we got somebody else who snuck in. We got Cerny Mistwalker in here. Good to see you. I love the Star Wars references. Actually, though, I don't think that's a Star Wars reference. That's like almost like kind of like macabre, you know. The
sauce
Mistwalker.
might be.
Remember the movie The Fog, the Mistwalker? That's kind of what it reminds me of. Labworks, the troll in the chat. Good to see you, Labworks. That's Paul, by the way.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
And I know I saw somebody else. Tom Morowitz. Good to see you, Tom. How are you, sir? Good to have you in the chat. Let's just make sure I didn't miss anybody. Oh, Apex Tima. Apex Tima is in the chat tonight. Good to see you first time. Stay and hang out for a while. We're going to have a good show tonight. And that's it.
That's it. I wanted to kind of jump into a tweet that I tweeted the other day, and I kind of wanted to go into that. But before we get into that, I kind of want to ask you guys, what drives you, Tim, to be an advocate for vaping?
Well, I think the biggest part of it is really the core of my enthusiasm, and that is what vaping did for me to get me away from smoking. Because I don't think it had. I mean, I'm confident now. Had it not been for vaping, I would probably still be smoking today. And then when you realize you want that to continue to be a part of your life, and you realize you're a part of a massive community of people who are there for the same reasons that you are, literally this exact same reasons. I think that right there is the I don't want to use a negative term, but that's sort of the notch in the bedpost that says when you get up every day, it's not just for you, it's for everyone else collectively, because you don't want those people to lose it any more than you want to lose it. So that's what drives me.
Yeah, how about you, Paul?
That's a hard question to answer. I've been doing it for a long time now.
Yeah.
But some things motivate me, some things actually turn me off completely these days.
Yeah.
And I'm getting reports from all over the world of things that are happening. And what we're going through here in Australia is quite hard, because now we're also having information geo-blocked. Information from around the world is now being geo-blocked. So I'm on a VPN changing my country every 5 minutes to find out what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
It's not pretty. But what motivates me is actually helping people, stay away from combustibles and try and educate the uneducated, or the how could we put it, the brainwashed, that haven't been taught the right things, or they've been told one thing and then they'll amplify it tenfold until they get their own answer.
Yep.
They're the things.
Yeah. And for you, Matt, 7 years ago when you started doing your videos, I mean, what was it when back then that you made you say, hey, I got to step up my game here and be a little bit more active in the advocacy department?
Dude, it's actually been 9 years.
9 years.
Yes.
Yeah, 9.
I had to delete a lot of my old videos. So if you were looking, but honestly, I just did it for the babes, and here I am hanging out with 3 babes.
You did it for the... Well, you scored one, so I mean, you held on to the one you got.
I got her before the vaping thing.
Oh,
But no, I mean it's kind of the same thing. My own experience, it's pretty public that I got oral cancer when I was 30, and vaping is like the one thing that helped me quit after struggling mightily to quit before that. And
you had an illness. You had an illness you had to deal with at the beginning. Yeah.
But it's also kind of opened me up to just drug policy in general, which has become a passion of mine. Like obviously just the war on drugs and what's going on, the history of drugs. It's definitely framed the way I look at a lot of things differently. And but I'm with Paul. I mean, it's like it's definitely infuriating half the time, and I've been burnt out more times than I can count. But I keep coming back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it gets to the point where it's just very, very frustrating for me. Like I wrote in my post. I mean, for me now, I'm at the point where I think most of us in this panel are. We know how to get our stuff. If things were to go, bad, us four have been around long enough to know where I can get my e-liquid. And for me, that's that part of it is sad for that newer vapor because he's not going to have that opportunity, and he may end up in the black market. He may end up getting sick. He may end up getting some inferior product that it may hurt him and end him up in the hospital. So for me, it's about that future smoker being able to have an opportunity that we all have in buying our e-liquid and buying a safe quality product. So that's my reason. And I have a couple here. Rogue wrote, for me, it's complicated and simple. First, I lost my mother due to smoking related cancer, which spread through her chest. I have friends and family who smoke. Thankfully, I have helped many switch to e-cigs. I tried everything the hospital offered to help me quit, and nothing worked. And that's the thing. I think we all run into the same thing. It's nothing. None of that stuff worked. Patches, gums, lozenges. I don't know. I think I didn't do hypnosis. None of you guys did hypnosis, did you?
No.
You did? Of course you did.
No. I'd heard different reports about it, and it was on my doctor's. He actually said, no, go and try it. It worked for about 5 minutes until I was out one night, and then bang, thanks for coming. Back on the stinkies.
It's a weird thing. I know you have to want to be hypnotized. I've been hypnotized. I didn't like the feeling, but I know you need to be hypnotized. But it's weird how they could put something in your head like that to what did they do to you? Like they made you say that the cigarette tasted like shit, or?
No, it was after it. There was like a small mason jar that he gave me. He emptied out my ashtray and put it into a little mason jar, and that used to sit with me. That was part of it, and that was a trigger. But it didn't last too long. Put it that way.
I guess, and I've heard that story before, where like it can be it could potentially be a helpful tool for some folks, but long term, I mean, unless you're going to change other habits, like if you're still going to drink sometimes, then that hypnotism is going to go out the window pretty fast, because the drinking and the craving you get for nicotine when you're drinking is probably going to overpower it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask generally across the panel, like, I don't doubt that hypnosis works for multiple reasons, despite being sort of the sideshow thing when people fall over and act like chickens and shit. But do you think that hypnosis is more effective as a quit smoking tool when the mindset of the individual is, I'm going to quit? They're just still kind of like struggling to get to that point, but their mindset is already on that trajectory. Whereas someone who's a little bit more maybe impressionable, like Matt said, hypnosis is kind of futile.
Yeah, I think it's probably mindset and just where somebody's at in their lives, how many potential temptations are they going to have, things like that. But and maybe somebody that's already in therapy too, like maybe they've had other drug issues or something, so they're going to drug therapy at the same time, so like they can go back to their therapist after they have the hypnotist stuff and get like some kind of support or whatever. But that's obviously in the minority.
Yeah, that's true.
Southern Vapor writes, basically the same reasons, but my true motivation is for all the people who we have lost to smoking, which is a big thing to me. That's we all have someone that we've lost to smoking, and that's one of my reasons too, as well. That motivates me is, I think, how much could my grandfather have lived past 65? I mean, would he have had, a cancer or stroke and all that? 65 nowadays that's nothing. I mean, shit, everyone's in their 80s now, it seems like. But having my grandfather who smoked at least 3 packs of cigarettes a day, constantly had a cigarette. He would cut people's hair with a cigarette in his hand. I never understood that talent. But yeah, I mean, vape's not 3 possible reasons that they didn't quit. Vape not available, didn't have help or guidance, refused help due to misinformation. That's the big one, and that's the one we run into all the time. And with people approaching us each and every day saying, "Oh, that's going to kill you," while they're fucking smoking a cigarette. There was one in here, Mallory wrote, what drives me is simple. Vaping saved my life. Having assholes trying hard to get me to smoke again. Having people that are supposed to be for the people like the politicians they are. This is why I fight so hard, and not just for myself, but for others that can't do it. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing for me. I mean, and there was one more in here that I need to find it, because she's not a vapor, but she's doing it and promoting vaping because it's helping her son or her nephew or cousin. I'd have to look through it. And that was kind of neat seeing that. I mean, she's not a vapor and she has nothing to do with vaping. She doesn't smoke, but she understands the benefits and how it's helping her nephew. And she's supporting, vaping. And I wish we could get more people like her to realize that this is a great product, that it's working for millions and millions of fucking people.
Hit show right there on the bottom. See if there's more comments hidden at the bottom. Show. There you go. Probably.
Steve Vapes. Yeah, it was here somewhere, and I wanted to find it and give her Janine. Rick, Steve Douglas.
Daria.
Yeah, Steve Douglas. He's here in Australia. He owns Victory Vape down here in Melbourne.
Is that it, Nancy?
No, yeah,
that's Nancy Lucas.
Yeah,
from CAFRA.
Yeah, I don't know where it went. Should she erase it? Right here, Sip. I want my cousin to continue to be able to vape and be an ex-smoker and live. I don't vape, but I will continue to stand with family, friends who do. So that's nice to see that. I mean, we don't see that too often. People that are not in our community or smoker, support vaping. So, Matt, are you ready for some questions?
Sure.
Sure.
Do it.
The confidence is oozing out of
this. Oozing. Opportunity came knocking at your door in recent weeks, and as many of us know that you have accepted a new role in a different industry. Can you talk a little bit about your new role?
Yeah. So I started, kind of slowly dipping my feet into like the job market beginning of last year, or not beginning, but like April, May time, when I was close to losing my YouTube channel. Yeah. And that whole scenario really just kind of made me realize like I need to diversify a bit. I'm still going to do the same amount of videos that I did before, but I'm now working for a company called Stay Lit. It's actually Carolina Hemp Refinery, but they own multiple brands under that. So single sourced, Stay Lit, and a few others, and it's cannabinoids mostly, and some legal mushroom products as well. And I'm as you probably saw on Facebook, I'm passionate about those products too. I mean, I credit cannabis with helping me get off of opioids back in 2017, because I was taking opioids for 8 years. And I've seen how much it's helped, lots of different people, including other family members I have that never would have touched this stuff 10 years ago, but it's a little more socially acceptable now. Yeah. So that's it's something that I'm excited for. I'm going to help them with marketing, sales, and there's some potential projects coming up that I can't talk about now that might veer back towards, nicotine too.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. I mean, it's nice to be involved in something that you're not so worried about that's going to be gone in 6 or 7 months or 8 months, and that's accepted, and almost to the point where I'd say within the next maybe 5 years, it'd probably be U.S. wide. I think within the next 5 years, it'll be every state in the United States will actually fall into allowing cannabis into their system. So I mean,
Yeah.
do you think?
Yeah, probably, but it's not. I don't think it's a simple road either. So,
No.
like, there's a lot of people in the cannabis industry now that aren't necessarily wanting federal legalization just because they're so afraid of how the feds are going to treat it. Right?
Yeah,
What are they going to hand it to the biggest players? Do some kind of have the FDA give oversight with massive applications, that only the big dogs can do. So there's still a lot of fear in the cannabis industry, and they got hit with the Valley stuff as well. I mean,
yeah.
cannabis vapor product sales dropped way off when that Valley stuff hit, and so I wouldn't say it's like it's stable, but I'm used to these rogue industries, I guess. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, we had Matthew on the other day, and we were talking about the big bill that's in. It should be coming up in Congress here shortly, but that's the Safe Banking Act, and I think once that goes through, I think you'll start to see more of the states jump aboard because that's
a big
money
one for sure. Yeah,
that's money, man. That is money. That's
and
just
it's just so unsafe right now for a lot of these dispensaries that are just they're getting robbed a good amount, and like everyone knows they have cash, and then they have a hard time even finding banks to deposit that cash into after the fact. And it's just, so there's like some of these guys have just cash hidden around, like they have to act like old school drug dealers or something, even though what they're doing is legal in that state, but the way they have to act with their money is
yeah, go ahead, Tim.
I was saying they got the Folgers jar buried in the backyard.
Under mattresses, fucking out here. I mean, there was some of the people my son deals with. I mean, they're spending their money on $100,000 safes, built in safes that are just they're not you can't move them. You're not going to go in there and just pick up the safe and move it because it's just nowhere to go. I mean, they're having armored trucks pick up money out of those places like 3-4 times a day. And, that's not going to a bank. That's going in his home, or some safe place that he's using. With a lot of people, I'll let these guys jump in a second. I got one more question with everybody kind of moving around in our industry right now and going into different things. You're still focused on advocacy and vaping. I think people need to realize that. I don't understand why people don't think that you're just going to step away from advocacy and vaping altogether.
Yeah, I'm not, but I'm still a CASA board member, but none of my advocacy work has ever been paid for. It would have been awesome if it was, because I obviously really enjoy it, but none of that was ever paid for. And my videos don't. It's not like I've gotten faster and faster at the filming and editing process compared to even a couple years ago.
Yeah,
my videos do not take me a whole day when I'm doing them. So I think it'll be not easy, but it'll be good for me to be a little bit busier, and I'll still be able to juggle both.
Right. Yeah, I don't know why that's just like the first thing that pops up in everybody's friggin' mind here now.
Well, and people are like, "Oh, you traitor, or you're leaving," or
it's
whatever.
just so ridiculous.
I also kind of feel like there's a decent amount. Obviously, it's different, but there is some overlap. They use vaping style products. We use vaping style products. I think there's harm reduction elements when it comes to cannabis as well.
Yep.
And so it's they're products that I use. I use cannabis almost daily, so it doesn't feel like I'm leaving the team or anything like that.
Right. I mean, it just blows me away that's like the first thing that everyone's jumping to. And it's just like, hey, this is Matt, he's still an advocate for this industry. He's still around here. I don't understand this trader shit and all this other bullshit. Like I said last week, look at someone's body of work. That doesn't change. Somebody that's been involved in this, you've been involved not just in the videos, but with other hardware manufacturer, e-liquid manufacturer. You got your own line, correct? Or you have
with Timmy and Phil.
Right. So I mean, it's just like, oh, now all of a sudden Matt's fucking done. Matt's done. He's not part of this industry. He's not part of this community. I'm like, you guys are fucking stupid or what?
Yeah, that was definitely never like my thought. I'm going to continue making content for as long as I absolutely can, whether unless all the platforms kick me off or something. Like I feel like I put so much time and energy into my YouTube channel that like I would never just let that, I'm just not doing videos anymore. Like I still enjoy it. Like, it's not like the old days where there was so much innovation happening and there's so much hobbyist product and there was like something crazy and new, but most of it sucked, like nowadays things are more incremental. They're more stable. Most vape products are pretty decent. And so, but I still like just enjoy seeing the newest vape gear. Like I still get excited, like this that I'm using right here, the SX Mini V Class. Like this thing made me excited. I love using it.
Yeah.
It fits the bill perfectly. It's great for mouth along and direct lung. It's got temperature control and some simple temperature control in there just so you don't get dry hits. It's great. And it brings me joy. I'm not going to leave.
It's been a while, huh? We were talking about this not too long ago, and I felt the same way. It's just like I haven't seen anything that excites me, nothing that really kind of draws me in and says, makes me want to grab my wallet and just buy it.
Yeah.
That depends. No, that depends because the SX that Matt's using, there's a 21700 version of that coming out that's full Boro. Yeah, full Boro. And there's also a 21700 version of the Aspire box coming out, and that's the one that I'm interested in. Well, both of them. I've got both devices, but my question to you though is, I'm very interested in the mushroom side of things and microdosing because that's becoming a big thing now here in Australia with people with PTSD. That and the use of MDMA. Is that also a part of what you're looking at down the pathway?
The company that I'm working for just released a mushroom product that's Amanita, which is a legal ingredient here. So, but it's small doses, like it's in capsule form, and I think it's really easy to kind of dip your toes in and microdose with those. And there's some other products that they're talking about coming out with that I think will be great for microdosing as well. But I'm not. The last time I tripped on mushrooms, I'll tell you guys a quick story. It's so stupid of me, right? Yeah. I found I moved to Montana for my ex-wife. I moved over here, and in 2008, her and I got divorced, and I had plans to move back to Seattle area, which is where I'm from, and I was bartending at the time. My construction company went under because we just had the crash. It was a bad time in my life. Anyway, I had all these plans to move back. And then I was dating a girl that wasn't very serious. And she told me she was pregnant. And my dumbass, like two days after that, decided to do shrooms.
Yeah, of course.
Fucking worst trip ever. You don't ever do shrooms when you got like a lot of upheaval in your life and crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know why I did that, and it's just ever since then it's put a bad taste in my mouth. But I like the microdosing because you don't lose as much control. You feel like it's a little bit takes the edge off. That can almost act kind of like a sedative or a benzo sometimes, or like a little bit of a body high, a little bit of a mood elevation, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I won't even tell you my last mushroom story. Tim,
my son's 12 now, so it was like 13 years ago that I tripped on shrooms the last time.
Yeah. So I think I dabbled in shrooms eons ago too, but it would always seem to be kind of in a good place, just more giggling in the bushes and being stupid and pretending you're seeing shit that you're not seeing. But my question, I don't know I guess it's an inquiry to Matt. So I mean, it seems like more and more we see people from the advocacy space, or at least the influencer space, if you want to call it that, kind of venturing off into the THC biosphere. Do you think that vaping advocacy in general, even though it's as daunting as it is, do you think there's anything to glean for the vapor industry that can be pulled from the fight that the THC industry and the hemp industry have had to go through just to kind of get to where they're at? You know, they're being on the precipice of potentially being widely accepted, and then vapors kind of being the demonized heroin item of the bunch.
Well, I mean, I think like if you like from like a macro viewpoint, if you look at it, I mean, the biggest thing for me to take away is the fact that those folks, there's marijuana advocates that have been doing it since the 60s, 70s, right?
Yep.
They stuck with it. It took decades, and hopefully it doesn't take us that long. But the truth did come out, and the science came out, and like I feel like that's going to happen in our situation. You can't like hide something forever, right? You're going to have more and more years of research, more and more years of showing, there's going to be people that have been, they've vaped for 20 years or whatever, more be able to research them. And I just think over time, like there's just no way that the truth won't come out. You know what I'm saying? Like it's going to happen, but right now they're able to kind of muddy the waters a bit. Well, more than a bit, but
yeah.
So I think that's a big thing. And, it's still, cannabis is still in its infancy in a lot of ways. Like you have a lot of old school people, folks in California that have been around for forever. And a lot of them were black market growers before they went into the legitimate space and stuff. But it still makes a lot of the same mistakes we do. They still have a lot of the same issues of, kids, it being appealing to kids. And like I was saying earlier, I was talking to a dispensary owner actually earlier today because he has a podcast and he wanted to see if I could come on it just to talk about vape related cannabis gear, because he sees so many customers that are just still scared to even touch those products after E-Valley. And how to use them properly. There's a little more, our hardware is more advanced than theirs in a lot of ways. And right now they still use C-cell tanks, and C-cell tanks tend to get gurgly and all blocked up once they get low, and so people have to deal with that. And so then now they're introducing preheat to a lot of devices. So it's kind of interesting because you're right, they've been around for a long time, but they're still in its infancy when it's coming to like maturing the space, more hardware, more user-friendly product. And in some ways they're almost behind vaping in that aspect.
Yeah.
Well, the only reason why I was bringing it up too was because, you see the cannabis environment sort of like moving with innovation and change and kind of shifting and changing a lot. So, they maybe have put themselves a little bit in the pathway of being scrutinized a little bit more. I mean, but years ago, we didn't really have kind of like the mainstream edible markets and stuff like that. Like, people were doing the brownie thing or the Rice Krispie treat thing. And that was, always sort of like a chuckle kind of joke. But now, they have more things. They're diversifying. So being that I'm not saying there's not a lot of smart people in the vapor space that are fighting, at the legal level as well as the advocacy front. I was just wondering if maybe there were some marks that maybe the vapor industry was missing from an advocacy standpoint, that the cannabis industry has been like, oh, well, we've been through this for years, and these might be, reasonable approaches for you to take, because it helped us with legislators. It helped us with lawmakers and things like that.
I do think there's a lot of good things to take away from it. It's, like Ethan Nadelman's become a friend of mine, and he, obviously he wasn't just a champion of marijuana legalization, but that was a big part of what he did.
Yeah.
But it took him a long time, and they had a lot of money behind him. Like the cannabis space was good at raising money over the years and becoming more and more powerful, but it did not happen overnight. Like if you look at the spans there, like what California legalized medical marijuana in like the late 90s, I think. Then it took them like 15 years or more, 20 years to have full recreational. And it's just like, it's slow and incremental. And so I think that that's what's going to happen with us, to where I don't feel like necessarily one day all of a sudden everybody's going to be like, unless like the government was to just make this huge proclamation. But I don't think one day like it's all of a sudden everybody's going to be like, vapes are great. Look, we figured it out. It's going to be like slowly more accepted, and then you're going to see maybe a few positive pieces here and there about how vaping helps somebody, or a new some new positive research, and then I think it's going to snowball that way. Now, does it mean that even if like the government has to admit that vapes are way better for you than smoking, and it's a great harm reduction tool, and all of society is on board, does it mean that things are ever going to go back to where they were before? Probably not. Like there's probably still going to be some regulation, unfortunately, but hopefully they loosen up on some of the smaller players so we can continue having, independent e-liquid companies and lots of refillable products and stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah, for me, it seems like with the FDA, they're playing their cards right. Eventually, they may get to the point where they say, "Okay, this is good. Let's go with this." But I think it's a weaning out process, and I think that's exactly what they want to do, is just kind of wean out some of the smaller businesses, the vape shops that are mixing in house, and eventually get to the point where maybe there's 5 companies that are actually sustainable to stay in business and continue paying these outrageous fees to the FDA to continue making e-liquids, because eventually they're going to have to do something. I mean, it's hard for me to I'm at a point where I find it really hard to understand why we are going to be eventually here. We're going to be stuck with these flavors. That's it, because nobody is going to go the extra step to go through these PMTAs maybe later down in 4 or 5 years down the road, where they decide, hey, I want to make something else, but I'm not going to do it like we have, for the last 10 years. It's just like we have had people making flavors, coming out with different lines, different, and yeah, maybe a little slight difference between each brand, but at least I had an opportunity to try this guy's mango, and this guy's mango, where
It's
shut
always
up,
the
Paul.
mango.
It's always about
Always
the
the
mango,
mango.
bitch. It's always about the mango.
But
But yeah, it's sad that's what it seems like to me, is they're just kind of waiting it out, weaning.
but I also think they just don't have a clue what they're going to do. I mean, keep in mind, the FDA, there's other products out there, none that are nearly as controversial as vape stuff. So I'll say that, but there's other products out there that FDA is supposed to have, regulations over, that don't follow it. Like one I've said before, and it's always funny to me, like sexual lubricants. They're supposed to get FDA approval. Pretty much none of them do, and the FDA just has never gone after them. Like, but they're supposed to be approved, go through their authorization and shit before. So, I don't know if like maybe they just know in the back of their head, we're not ever going to be able to control all of this, but we're going to, pick off some of the big players and kind of create fear and just, slowly choke out this industry in some ways. But at the same time, I think they're also seeing like, look, we went after Juul and pre-filled flavored pods, and then that just opened a huge vacuum, and here came the disposables, and it made it, in a lot of ways worse than it was. So it's like, they have to see that and know like that you do these hardcore solid bands, like it's just another product category that's going to come fill the space, and there's going to be other issues. So, and you also got another thing I think we always have to remember. I'm not defending the FDA here. I think most of them are horrible, although their scientists, seem to be pretty good behind the scenes, even though they don't get their way. There's so much money in the anti-vaping world, and a lot of that is pressure on the FDA. So like, if you think that we're the ones that bug the FDA the most, I can almost promise you that it's the Bloomberg cult, that really bugs them the most and gets up their ass the most behind the scenes, and has a lot more power to do it, and knows how to get to the right people and stuff.
And
but
you're
at
right,
some
Michael.
point, I think, down the road, at some point, obviously Michael Bloomberg's getting old. I don't think he's going to be giving $100 million to anti-vape causes every other year. you know, for a long period of time. Like at some point, some of these crusty old bastards like him and what's his butt, Matt Myers at Tobacco Free Kids, like they're gonna die or at least retire, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think, and another thing to point out, sorry, I'm rambling on this, but I will say that while you know, we could debate where this is a good or bad thing. Obviously, I'm glad that very few teens and people in their 20s are smoking, but there are a good amount of them that vape, and they're getting older and older. And I go and sometimes I lurk in like younger Facebook groups, not young, you know, but Gen Zers, just to see what they talk about. There's a lot of meme groups with Gen Zers in them, and they're pretty damn favorable with vaping. And sometimes I'll just see like a Gen Zer talk about, oh yeah, like what you would smoke, that's so much worse for you. Like they seem more knowledgeable on this shit than you know, the old people do. So I guess that's my hope, is that we're going to slowly, those folks are retiring, we're going to slowly incrementally progress, you know, and then at some point vaping is going to be accepted as the harm reduction tool that it is.
I hope so. And you're right, Michael. Vitamins. I mean, vitamins. I don't pay attention.
Like vitamins was such a struggle for FDA. They just gave up on them. They just put them into the consumer category and said, "Fuck it, we're not going to do it." They were originally supposed to, but it was just too much.
I was at Walgreens today, and I really never kind of paid attention, but there was fucking two full rows of nothing but multivitamins, and I was just like saying to myself, Jesus Christ, dude, are you fucking kidding me, man? And they're not cheap.
And these vitamin companies it's illegal for a vitamin company to make a health claim that's not FDA approved. They still do it all the time. Like the same, you know, just like how we're not supposed to make health claims. It's the same thing for them. They do it all the time and they get away with that.
Yeah. Take your vitamin.
I feel like part of it is they know that they have a little bit of leverage to strong arm us. The irony in it all, though, I mean, vitamins aside, it's funny. It just is comically ironic that the two things they don't seem to really care to go after, and I'm not knocking them, I'm just saying, but like, they go after the cannabis industry when in fact there's a lot of harm reduction and health beneficial elements to that industry. It's not just the dude getting friggin' stoned out of his gourd and you know, eating snacks the rest of the night. That might be the stereotypical perception that that's what weed is about or something. It's more of an intoxicant than anything else. But they go heavy after the cannabis industry in that regard when there's benefits to it being around. Same thing with vaping, right? Because we all know the truth behind that, right? Because I mean, it gets everybody off of smoking, and it's better. I would love to see some doctor just take a bullet and go up in front of everybody and say, I've been studying this guy who was a smoker for 25, 30 years. He's been vaping for the last 10, and I'm going to show you his lung x-rays and all of his test studies and give you the comparisons between when he was a smoker and how poor his health was to the improvements he's had. Not saying that vaping cured him, but it alleviated a lot of the elements of his life that were holding him down and literally almost killing him, COPD, whatever. I would just love to see that. But same with the vaping industry. And then the two things they kind of just, I mean, up until maybe a little bit recently, they kind of just throw their nose up about cigarettes and alcohol and all that stuff. And while I don't want to see alcohol eradicated or go back into prohibition,
easy.
I'm just saying if you look at its most elemental harms, there's no redeeming value to alcohol. Like there's no harm reduction alcohol other than maybe alcohol-free beer or whatever's out there. Or just not drinking at all. You know what I mean? Like there is no, you know, those are your alternatives. But it's funny to see them kind of not really care about that stuff. But oh shit, they care they'll throw, you know, knives at vaping and cannabis.
It's fear of something new. That's part of it. And you know, like alcohol and cigarettes have just like ingrained itself in our culture to where, you know, it's like just accepted. And when something new comes out, you know, some kids vaping some fruity tooty flavor, you know, that scares them way more than the idea of their kid doing shots and going driving, you know.
Exactly.
But it's like, I think a lot of people just don't have enough self-awareness to sometimes realize that, like, and really gauge the harms, because it's fear of the unknown and fear of the new thing. And that's what's happening with marijuana. And that's what happened with marijuana back in the day when they banned it the first time too, and like they were upset because black people were using it, and black jazz musicians, and it was part of their culture. And so let's ban it because this substance seems really scary, and we don't want it to ruin our culture.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there was a study put together, I think it was in the last 3 years. I saw it on Twitter and then it got thrown out. There was an Indian doctor that actually took 25 of his patients, as they were like heavy smokers. They all switched to vaping, and when the ban came in force in India, he was doing a long-term study with these guys switching from combustibles to the vape space. And when he tried to publish his findings and all of the different lung x-rays, CT and MRI of the lung, he was actually thrown off. He was actually barred from practicing medicine.
Yep.
Because the findings that he found, if you saw the shots of like people with, well, I've got emphysema, but these ones were stage 3 and 4 emphysema. Yet after 12 months of vaping, it actually creeped back to stage 3. And you could actually see the 3-year study. By the 3rd year, it was at a 2, which I'd never seen anything like this before. But he was barred from practicing medicine because they thought it was hocus pocus.
Yeah.
And that really hurts me, because that study would have been so imperative to the WHO and to the FCTC if that study actually got published and then got submitted to tobacco control. That would have changed the whole playing field in like a snap of a finger.
Yeah.
And then Farsalinas also did the same thing with the flavor study. And a lot of that's been rejected, but we know the truth behind it. He identified a lot of the novel like chemicals or components that should be outlawed. And we the guys in the mixing arena, like myself, we took that on board and we got rid of it out of what we were manufacturing.
Yeah.
And I just think, and to take one point from you, Matt, you're saying that Bloomberg, so be it with FDA, but you also then have to have a look at Johnson & Johnson's or the Johnson Foundation.
Oh, for sure.
You also have to look at GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, and then you also have to look at Johnson & Johnson as a company. Those two have been more destructive to this industry than what Bloomberg has ever done. They've got way more power with the FDA and governments around the world, for that matter, because they've all got products in the game.
Bloomberg cult, I just mean he's kind of the leader, but like, yeah, the pharma and stuff like that definitely fit inside there, and there's a lot more money than just the Bloomberg money getting thrown at it.
Yeah.
I mean, what I think is going to be interesting is, this decade we're going to see more investment by big tobacco into THR products. At least they say they're going to do that, right?
Yeah.
And PMI is moving into the US, and they want to obviously push a smoke-free future. That's what they're saying. But at the same time, so like they're going to have to like obviously try to like push out studies that show this and to fight for it and stuff. But at the same time, they don't necessarily want like regulations to be more lax to let all these small guys back into space to compete with them. So it's going to be interesting, like how are they going to thread that needle to where they have to convince society that these products are safer, like that's part of their mission. But at the same time, they also want to corner the industry and make sure that the other guys can't get in.
Well,
yeah.
Well, a key component to that was when PMI bought up a couple of pharma companies or manufacturers of certain devices, and that had to do with inhalables. When that came out last year, I think it was last year, they were shunned by the medical industry. And I just laughed at them and I said, listen, vapor technology is way ahead of that game. By using that company and the technology that they've got at their fingertips, the machinery, the testing technology, they're going to be able to push this further, faster. BAT are also on this same pathway as well. And now the big one that I'm watching very closely is JTI, Japan Tobacco. Those three are playing a very, very interesting game between the three of them to see who can get to that end goal of the safest product on the market. And coil technology, and I've watching that also in the cannabis space. I'm very interested in the quartz coil technology that they're messing around with dabs and resins. I think that could be adapted in some way, shape, or form to the vape space. I'm not interested in ceramics. I'm interested in naturally formed, like crystalline products that can be heated to get the same as what we're doing now with metal.
Yeah,
I think that could be somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's definitely a financial incentive for them to make a product that's like just as effective as like, you know, a Juul or whatever, you know, disposables, whatever, but that is as safe as possible because obviously they, you know, if you can keep your customers alive for as long as possible, they're going to buy more of your product. You know,
Yeah, correct.
granny's vaping until they're 90, like they bought a shitload of vapes in their lifetime.
Yeah. Well, comparing the two industry, the cannabis industry and the vaping industry, you know, yes, the cannabis industry has been at it much longer than the vape industry has been. Do you think a little bit of it has to do with the demographics of the age gap of the owner that is in the cannabis, which is a much older gentleman than what's being, or how, you know what I'm saying? That group was a much older group. Owners were much older. They were more invested in their cities and businesses and stuff like that, to where the vape industry was the guy in his 20s, the guy in his mid 20s for a long time. Do you think that had a little bit to do with how it was being looked upon in the rest of the world? As far as here in the US?
Know. I mean, because there's plenty of like, you know, products. If you walk into like a dispensary in California, you're probably going to see some products that look pretty childish. You're going to see some young people working behind the counter. And you know, there's article, we we don't follow it as much because we're more focused on nicotine, obviously, but there are like still quite a few fear mongering articles about teens using pot in some of these legal states. So there's still fear mongering happening about that now. It's not a perfect 1-to-1 because marijuana was basically like legal, you know, 100 years ago. Then I think it was like became illegal in like the, you know, well, there was like first law was like the 40s and then they cracked down on it, something like that. I could be wrong. But anyway, they've been illegal for decades and then they're slowly becoming legal again. But I think once, you know, pot is 100% legalized everywhere, they're going to run into a lot of fucking shit, you know? And so there could be crackdowns on edibles and things like that. That's things that, you know, there's already been, you know, some stories about, you know, a 2 or 3 year old finding edibles and eating them and stuff. So I think it was just marijuana's time because it was illegal for so long and there were so many people locked up over it. And so it really tugged at everyone's heartstrings, and the science showed that, hey, this drug is not nearly as, you know, dangerous as people have been trying to paint it in the past. So silly that we're not selling it now.
But when you look at the numbers, Matt, you look at the numbers of the people that are buying the edibles, the people that are buying the cannabis at these places. You're looking at a much older client, and they have the numbers to prove it. I mean, they're
if you look at who's actually using I mean, teen marijuana use is higher than teen nicotine use right now. If you look at
easily.
So like they're still getting to the teens somehow. you know, what in legal states or illegal states.
Well, everybody's got a what was the typical 80s donor guy that you bought from? Tim's name was always had a typical Scott or Bob.
Oh, you mean like just the generalized name?
Yeah.
No, we always had some guy with like
Yep.
an alternate name, like Alistair or something. You know, he was like, you knew he was the guy because he had the weird name, and he would wear like a button down like Oxford shirt that was like 3 sizes too big for him and shit like that. Yeah. And he
But I will say,
smelled.
like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I will say right now, as is, I mean, the cannabis industry definitely has their shit together more as far as their, you know, advocacy work and stuff like that. But I think it was also just, you know, kind of easier because they were all fighting like a common enemy and not like as much infighting. But, you know, they're going to have it too. Like right now, the cannabis industry is really pushing to get D8 and any legal cannabinoids under the Farm Bill, you know, get those pushed into the dispensary. They want only them to be able to sell them, which, you know, in some ways it's like, okay, but at the same time, what about the grandma that's been buying like CBD capsules from her health food store for the last couple of years? Does she want to go into a dispensary to have to buy that stuff? So I mean, it's like there's still some of the same drama, but yeah, I think it just because it took such a hit for so long that everyone gave in, and the big money players aren't fighting it as much this time around too.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it to do is, you're right. I mean, it's been a long time. I think they were very well prepared. They did have the lawyers that they needed to have in place to get this pushed through, and I think a lot of it had to do with them representing a much older clientele and a much older owner as far as owning the actual businesses. These were people that were established in their communities, you know, in their late 40s, early 50s, that just, you know, they've been involved in it, like you said, since the 60s and the 70s, and they were just more I hate using it, but more part of their society, a cleaner part of society, where
that could have
in the beginning
in California, like when they first legalized medical and stuff like that, that definitely could have played a part, but so did the, you know, tens of millions that George Soros put into fighting, you know, pushing for legalization. That helped too, you know, so it's tough to say like what, you know, is it just the money that changes minds, or, you know, was it also
I think too in the beginning, like I said before, I mean, you know, this is a product my mom called me on the phone because she saw it on the Phil Donahue show. It was the blue, and she's like, you got to go try this. And you know, from becoming this product that was just, you know, just amazing, is going to help all these people, to the shit show that it is today. To me, it just there's just these two different professionals. And I hate saying, I know that the vaping industry was started by a lot of people that were fighting addiction. And I think that kind of hurt us in the beginning, because that's what it was looked upon. These are, you know, these are ex-heroin addicts. These are ex opiate addicts, and they're just finding a new thing to help them get by with their addiction, and vaping was it. I think a lot of people up in Washington, and mayors and city councilmen, and what they looked at it as, here's a group of people that don't know how to start a business, don't know how to establish and keep a business running, and don't really care about regulations and laws. And I think that
I understand your point, but I feel like over the years there's been some advocates that have put too much of a spotlight on that. Because look at the company that became enemy number one. They weren't the ex-addicts that you know, they were tech bros that had billions of dollars behind them. And that were, you know, had a pretty nice operation as far as like quality control and stuff like that. Like I totally agree that it was an immature industry. There were shitloads of mistakes along the way. It could have been done a lot better from our end, but do I think that it would have made a difference? The longer this spans, the more I say no. Like I just feel like they were going to get us regardless. They would have
found something.
It was too disruptive and too fast.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not trying to counter your the point about sort of like the ex miscreants of society, the ones that were frowned upon, you know, who became the poster child of, you know, the thing that people could easily say, oh well, you know, this is bad. Let's be realistic. I mean, some of those miscreants view them, this was their open door, though. Like maybe a lot of them would have never been able to kind of get their feet cemented in anything else. They would have just been shoveling cement at a construction site, because that's probably the only chance anyone would have ever given them. And this was a shot for them to actually have something that they could latch onto, because they're not all dumb people. They just, you know, we're going through
there's a lot of
time.
first-time business owners. And I mean, let's face it, if you look at the, you know, at the numbers of the people who smoke, there are a lot of drug users that smoke, right? And lower income folks and stuff like that smoke. And you know, so obviously a lot of those original vapors, you know, might have been some, you know, drug users, or you know, had a criminal record or whatever. And so it, you know, it was a gold rush, and in some ways it was kind of the Wild West. And you know, there's certain people that have always been like, oh, we're gonna be fucked. And I try to be optimistic, but like in the back of my head, it's like, yeah, probably. Like, how are they not going to try to do what they're doing right now?
Yeah.
You know, there's always another thing that does keep me going, though, besides obviously helping people, and I'm passionate about it, and it saved my life, in my opinion. But there's always like that hope of, you know, like, for example, like the en banc hearing that's got that, you know, where the Triton case has to go before the full panel. Like, I'm excited for that shit. Like, there's always a little nugget that keeps you coming back for more, you know, a little nugget of hope that you know, keeps things interesting. So, you know, I think we'll see, you know, what happens with the legal battles over these next couple of years. And I mean, obviously not to get into politics, but you know, if someone would like DeSantis was to become president, I am assuming his FDA would probably go a little bit easier on vapor products. But who knows? You know, except to say it also depends on, like, will there be another E-Valley 2.0 or something like that that's going to freak everybody out, and then, you know, it doesn't matter who's president. Like, there's still a crackdown.
You talking about DeSantis out of Florida?
Yeah.
Look,
I'm not saying I'm a fan, but when it comes, you know, obviously,
just hope it's not Newsom. Just hope to God it's not fucking Newsom. That's all I'm saying.
But when it comes to stuff like vapor products, I think he could definitely be pretty favorable to, you know, to the vape world. But we'll see. Like,
I personally think he'd walk into the FDA with a scalpel and start tearing the place apart, because I don't think he likes what he's seeing or what he's hearing coming out of the FDA.
Yeah, I would hope, but you know, I try, like, I never put too much like hope in politicians. Like, look at just in my adult life, it's like Obama was going to be like the revolutionary, you know, it was going to like change things. It was very incremental. Not much happened, you know, like even Trump, who was pretty anti-establishment, still, when he had his feet held to the fire, did the pod, you know, the pre-filled pod ban, or that he was part of that. So like, it also depends on outside forces. Like, DeSantis could go in there and be like, I'm going to shake things up. I'm going, but then, you know, other things happen, and people get in his ear, and then, you know, you have half of your staff that wants to do it this way, and half of your staff that wants to do it that way, and so
I was gonna say, I think the proper approach is cautious optimism. There's a lot of reasons to maybe look down south in Florida and go, oh, holy crap, he'll be a mover and a shaker. And I'm not saying, you know, I'm not saying he isn't. I'm just saying it's a whole other. It's like hockey season. You got one season that's the 80 games, and then you've got the playoffs, and it becomes a totally different season. And I just feel like once a politician gets beyond sort of like the favorable state level as a governor, and they want to move into the president's race, things change.
It's a different ball game. Different ball game, and they're trying to like make a larger group of people happy, and they got more lobbyists and more big money interests coming out.
More zeros at the end of those checks.
Just saying. It's like the kid that promised us the chocolate milkshake, water fountains in elementary school so he could be the class president, and then he got there, and then you realize
Where's
you were
that
never going to
fucking-
get the swimming pool and and on the PE field.
Yeah. Bastard. But I guess like my point was just like there's always like some reasons to be optimistic.
Yeah.
Like, we could sit here and say like we're fucks, but there's also, some court cases going on. There are still some e-liquids that are still pending PMTA that haven't been denied. And the court thing, I think first and foremost, because that could really shake up how they do things potentially. But yeah, and then obviously politicians down the road.
Yeah.
Dirty politicians.
Dirty ass politicians.
Yeah. Always our nemesis. Well, so I mean, I had pulled one article for tonight to do in the news segment, but I think most people have probably heard about it. So I guess my question is, so you do have some, I don't know if you want to call them insignificant because they're not as larger market share companies, but obviously, we have to have some pioneers. And how do you think hearing about Views and their MDO that just happened here within the last couple of days? I mean, how do you think that the light that it sheds on the vapor industry as far as any potential? I mean, because maybe it's those bastions that we're holding on to because they're the ones able to kind of get a little bit further in the process versus the small independent.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't mind them, denying a big tobacco company because they have the money to fight this, and I want FDA to be stuck in court as much as possible. Like when it comes to these issues, and maybe it will make it so they refine or reform how they, some of their regulations. Obviously, they're still, covered by the Tobacco Control Act. There's certain things that they have to stick to. But, even like the Reagan-Udall report that recently came out, they mentioned things like, going to more of a standards-based system. And there's like a lot of things that the FDA needed to do. Doesn't mean that they're going to do it anytime soon, but there is at least, has been some criticism of what they're doing. Yeah. So sorry, I tend to ramble when I'm talking vape bag.
It's okay. Otherwise, you're stuck with me rambling, and sometimes it's probably good that I get a day off.
It takes Tim like 10 minutes to ask a question sometimes.
Well, you know what? My mom was a school teacher for 40 years, and she taught me to use colorful language, and I don't mean that in a weird way. I'm just saying she taught me about vocabulary and stuff. So I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to act smarter than I really am.
Your vocabulary is fine. You just stretch that fucking question out.
Dude, we got 2 hours to cover. a two-word question isn't going to get us very far.
I'm actually very curious about this with Views. It goes after 2 products, and they don't meet the public health standard, which is very, very interesting because there are other products that have actually passed.
Yeah, now the FDA has made it very clear that they're not letting anything in except for tobacco flavor. Yeah. Obviously, there's a whole nother argument now, like that we're starting to see in California about like what's tobacco flavor, and even big tobacco companies are skirting around the some of the rules there, or testing out the gray areas.
Yep.
But it's like, I think that their argument was that Views was like the second most used product by teens, and that menthol is more likely to get teen uptake than tobacco. But at the same time, a couple of years ago, they were saying that menthol e-cigs were going to be helpful when they do ban menthol cigarettes to help get people off of menthol cigarettes. And it's like, now you're just stripping all this stuff away from people, and they think there's not going to be a black market. I mean, John, you've probably seen like all the black market stuff going on in California already.
Bad. Yeah,
Telegram groups, and there's all kinds of shit selling menthol cigarettes and stuff.
They're doing everything that they can. Some of the vape shops don't even give a shit anymore. They still have all their flavors up on the shelf.
I don't really blame them. Like, honestly, if I was a vape shop there, I would probably just continue selling until somebody knocks on my door. I don't know what the fine is though. So
I'd be the same, 100%. Yeah. As a flavorist, I'd be there going, "Fuck you."
Well, yeah, I'm not. There's even people that told me they have police officers that are still coming into vape shops to buy their flavored nicotine. police
And that's the thing
officers.
with like a lot of these laws. I mean, look at what happened in happened in New York when it comes to like. There's so many illegal cigarettes sold in New York. There's still flavored vaping products sold all over the place in
Yeah.
New York. Like
Yeah.
you can make a regulation, but unless you're going to enforce it
Enforce it.
hardcore, like you
Yeah.
know, like are you just gonna I feel like there's other things like that too though, like in the past where something's been technically illegal but like it's still sold and you could still buy it, like we're like bongs or drug paraphernalia like
You know
at
what the
one point.
number one was it was back in the days when they it was spray paint to under 18.
Oh yeah,
Huffing.
It took them years to finally realize we need to put this shit behind some fucking gated fence so nobody can buy it anymore unless they ask for it and show an ID. But yeah, they had like it took them years to figure out, okay, we got to do something about the spray paint because it's
Well,
still
I mean, if you really think about, the general damage that chicken, I mean, that was killing people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were huffing themselves to death. I mean,
Yeah.
and then look at things like the Sudafed market and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I mean, they finally had to put that shit behind the counter because they, knew it
you
was a
have to
source.
scan your ID. Here they scan your ID anytime I buy any Diamond Tap or NyQuil.
Yeah, well, they're tracking you too
Yeah.
because they're looking at your purchasing habits because
Yeah.
they're looking at people leapfrogging from CVS to CVS to CVS
Yeah.
to CVS.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think there's some legitimate reasons to go ahead and lay the smackdown on certain stuff just because it is detrimental.
Yeah, I'm not anti-regulation, and
Yeah.
I agree. It's just like when you have regulations with no teeth, can you really blame the bad actors or the people that are still selling flavors? Like,
Yeah.
I can't, what's California's probably going to do is they're going to go and do a couple big busts,
Yeah.
and they're going to take pictures of them with all the shit they confiscated
On the table.
and they do that just to try to scare everybody else because they
Yeah.
know like they don't have the enforcement probably to go handle it 100%.
Well, it's exactly the same as Australia right now, Matt. When they introduced the prescription law, the black market just went out of control overnight.
I bet.
Like, you've got no idea. Every corner store now, including a newsagent, sells vapes.
Yeah.
With nicotine, without nicotine. No one gives a flying fuck here. And they've handed out a few $100,000 in fines. But the black market here in Australia, it was a government-sanctioned black market, you might as well say, when they introduced the prescription law. Yeah. And it is now completely out of control, and the government wants to now double down yet again and now try and completely ban vaping. What's this? 34.
Where are you, James?
Yeah, where are you? $34
where are you?
for 30 mils.
BC, British Columbia.
Okay,
that's the same as Australian dollars. So 34.
Oh yeah, they have a big tax in there, don't they?
Yeah, that's
fucking crazy.
That sucks, man. We're gonna have to figure out something with Canada. At the moment
well, I mean, that's the other side of the argument, though, isn't it? I mean, okay, so I mean, you can look at it from one perspective and say, well, at least you still have it, right? Like you can go and get it without a lot of the headache because it's kind of under the table black market stuff. And then there's the other side of the argument where, from an advocate's point of view, we're like, man, this makes no fucking sense at all because you're basically taking the thing that's better for you and out taxing it and making the thing that could potentially kill you more accessible and cheaper to put in your pocket. And that just is counterintuitive.
Yeah, that's stupid. If the FDA wants to see what the kids are up to, they should go to what we call them AMPMs, I don't know, convenience stores, and just sit there and just watch how many of these kids are buying fucking 2, 3, 4 cans of fucking Red Bull, fucking 4 or 5 cans of fucking Monster, and they're what's 7th grade, 7th and 8th grade. That's when I pick up my grandson, the 7th and 8th grade kids, and I always stop at that AMPM to get a drink before I go pick them up, and they're already out. And every single one of those kids, so 7th and 8th grade is what, 12, 13?
Yeah, around that.
Yeah, 12, 13. Every single one of them, 2-fisting fucking Red Bulls or
I know. My son's 12, and like all the kids, I have to regulate his usage, but like They love their energy drinks. But then you have older teenagers that are going in and going into C-stores, and they can still buy cigarettes even though they look like they're 16, 17.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them that have fake IDs too. I had a fake ID.
Yeah, I think we all did.
I did. I had my brothers. I said, you
It's
lost
like,
this.
it's like the kids thing. It's right. Okay, we all love our kids. We all want to protect our kids as much as possible. But kids have been doing shit that they're not supposed to do since the beginning of time. And if it wasn't for vaping, it would be something else. And like, it's like you're going after a problem that is unfixable. It's like trying to change human nature. Like it's not going to happen.
Yeah, Paul said it really well a few shows ago. They did all the advertisement for us. They're the ones that got these kids hooked on.
Yeah, that's true too. They definitely helped compound the problem.
Yeah,
the forbidden fruit.
Yeah, they hung it out there.
No, and that's my saying, and I actually have that on a T-shirt. Crafty little bastards.
Yeah.
Because we all were.
Yeah,
right.
You found a way. You all found a way.
Man, like when I was 15, I looked like a 10-year-old. Okay, even until my 30s, I was still getting asked for ID here in Australia, and I was still drinking and taking drugs at 15.
We're Gen X, though. We're badasses. We're Gen X. We're badasses. So,
but we're all crafty little bastards. We would find a way.
Yeah, they're still crafty though. Even today, even the Gen Zers, as lazy as they might be, they'll get off their ass and off their phone if it means they're going to get some, sneak some booze or something like that. They still have that rebelliousness in them.
Yeah. Well, and think about the tools at their disposal, which are not the tools that we had growing up in our era. I mean, with the advent of social media and all those back channels, I mean, Snapchat shit disappears in 24 hours. I mean,
you can buy all kinds of drugs on Snapchat. Obviously, you can get your vapes.
Yeah.
So I mean, cigarettes.
Sometimes it took us fucking hours just to buy 2 joints. We had to get fucking bowling alley, then fucking bike rack at the school, convenience store. Like you went to like 6-7 places before you found something.
Like obviously, I understand. Like that stuff needs to be cracked down on and whatnot. But again, it's just like trying to think you're ever going to solve some problem. Just be glad that like the teen smoking rates at like cigarettes are undoubtedly one of the biggest killers that a teenager is going to get into at that age.
Yeah.
And so they're down, the smoking rate's down to like 1% and that's unheard of. When I was in high school in the 90s, it was 25%.
Yeah. Shit, just about everybody smoked when I was in high school.
Everybody was a smoker when I was in high school. Shit, we could smoke at high school.
Yeah, we smoked at school. It may have been in the front. Ours was at the bike rack. You're allowed to smoke your cigarettes at the bike rack, and that was
same kind of thing. It was called the ramp where we were at the ramp. It was like the handicap ramp where the bikes could be parked in. So the grits on the ramp. The grits were the Leonard Skinner crowd that wore the denim jean jackets and the denim, nothing but denim and flannel shirts.
Denim
had Leonard Skinner patches on the backs of their jackets and stuff. They were the smokers.
And I think that's one thing too that like we have to at least give this generation credit for is like for example, I have my stepdaughter who's almost 17. She vaped. She admitted it to us. Like we had a talk with her about it. She's also tried using dab pens. Cannabis oil. But it's like she's at least like using like the harm reduction versions of these things. She's not doing hard drugs. We've drug tested her before. She's at least like in some ways smarter than I was at her age. I feel like they're.
We trusted everyone.
Yeah,
we did. We literally trusted everyone.
That pill? Sure, I'll take it. What was it?
No, we trusted everyone.
And I don't argue that there are just some kids that just want to cut loose and get as high as they can possibly make themselves. I do think that that's sort of like a personal challenge at times. But do you guys think that the generational culture differences have kids looking at the world a little bit differently? Like maybe it is they kind of recognize that cigarettes are kind of shit and they shouldn't be touching them, and that they would probably do something that they know isn't going to be as bad.
I mean,
They saw their uncle die from.
Yeah, I think that kids are if you talk to if you were to poll right now 100 teenagers and you were to poll 150-year-olds and you just said, is vaping safer than smoking? How much safer is it? I think the teens would be more accurate than the 50-year-olds would.
Yeah.
And so they still see that, like my daughter, she told me, like, when she was using it a lot, it was causing her some issues, with breathing. She's like vaping 50 milligram out of a disposable that she bought from somebody at school, right?
Yeah.
And so, she recognizes that it's not like risk-free, but they also recognize that like smoking's disgusting and it's way worse. And so at least got to give them credit for that they seem to be a little more savvy in that way.
Yeah, I mean, even my kids, I mean, two of them ended up smoking. One didn't, but all three of them grew up with teachers from kindergarten all the way up into high school that just pounded that fact that cigarettes are bad for them, even though they had two parents that smoked at home. And I remember every one of my kids, every time they started kindergarten, I always had some new thing I had to try for them. I had the rubber band. Dad, put this on. Every time you want you want a cigarette, snap the rubber band on your wrist. And I tried all that shit, but I think they grew up a little different where I grew up where, I would wake up in the morning and there's 6 people at the breakfast table fucking smoking.
Yeah.
Nonstop. Ashtrays all over the place. I mean, we grew up in that generation where every one of them smoked and they all knew even back then, so we're talking 70s, 80s. They knew it was bad for them, but they still continued to smoke, and they never forced us not to smoke. I mean, my mom's like, if you're going to smoke, you're buying it. I'm not buying your cigarettes. And that was the whole battle. It was like, do I go get a job and cut lawns and to buy my cigarettes? Because no one else was going to buy my cigarettes.
Oh yeah. Like in my office here, I have a lock with a keyed lock. So
Yeah.
My kids are getting older and older. Like I always make sure that everything's locked up, just because I know if I was them, I'd be tempted.
Oh yeah.
At that age, if my dad had cartons of cigarettes or he worked in the cigarette industry, like I would have been tempted to go in there.
Well, I was naive. I didn't even notice because I would, I had a little table set up in the front patio. Always had a pack sitting there, had a pack in the backyard, had a pack I never smoked in the house, but I never really kind of paid attention to, there was 4 in there. Now there's 2. I just grabbed the pack and started smoking. So they were kind of like, doing their little sneaky thing. And I'd laugh because my kids are, when did you get started? When I tell them my story, they're like, Jesus, Dad, it was my first cigarette I stole from a priest. Yeah. I was an altar boy and I stole my first cigarette from a priest. So I figure if you're taking them from me, I guess that's a little bit better than stealing from the priest.
I was a kid in those days you're talking about, but I remember my grandpa died from smoking when he was 63. And I remember going over to his house in that whole, everyone's smoking. We're going into his office because he owned a typewriter company and then he sold like computers when they first came out too. Yeah. And it's like everyone would just be at their desk smoking a cigarette. It was no thing.
Wow. Oh yeah, I would walk in my grandfather's barbershop and everyone would just be smoking. Like I said, my grandfather would be sitting there with the cigarette in his hand, cutting someone's hair. Like, I'm just like, how do you do it? So yeah, I mean, I think we grew up they're smarter. I hate saying it, but I think this generation is a little smarter. Yeah, they do have the cell phones and they have computers, but I think eventually we're going to start seeing some dumber kids. And I think with technology at fault for that reason. I mean, no one knows how.
Depends on like what I wouldn't necessarily say like they're smarter than like my generation was or your generation was. They're just different because they have like different lived experiences, and they do have more information at their fingertips than we do. So it is easier for them to get accurate info. But you know how the internet is. Sometimes it's hard to get accurate info on the internet. You could get 10 different answers to your question and still not know.
Yeah.
So they're definitely more tech savvy that way, but I think that they have maybe less social skills than we had at that age, just because we were out, talking to people. And I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, man. My parents would make me go door to door and talk to people when I was a kid.
Yeah. It's weird because I like, even when I go pick my grandson up and I see those kids, they're not talking to each other. They're walking on a sidewalk, staring into their phones, and it wasn't like when I was a kid. We kind of just talking what we're going to do the rest of the day, what's going on, where we're going to play ball, and all this stuff. And they're just, they're not paying attention to the sidewalk.
They are still talking to each other. It's just on their phones. They're
texting right next to each other. Hey,
they're all in a group chat talking shit about you.
That one kid, they're talking shit about that one kid.
See, millennials, this is what I figured out though. Millennials and Gen Xers kind of get screwed because we're sort of in the middle of Gen Z and the boomers, and the boomers hate millennials, but also the Gen Zers now hate millennials and make fun of them and call them like proto boomers, or like boomers in training and shit like that. So my generation's getting it from both sides now, where the boomers think we're all losers and lazy, but then our kids all think we're lame and almost boomers. So can't win, dude.
Yeah.
For me, I think the generation that I think is got it going on is your generation. I think millennials, not just because Gen X raised you guys, but I just think that you guys are more prepared for everyday bullshit than any other generation was. And I know like Gen X is going to hate me for this. Yeah, we did grow up, where both of our parents weren't home. We were by ourselves for fucking 8 hours every day after school before anybody came home. Yeah, we did cook our own meals. We learned how to use the microwave, all that nonsense. But I just think millennials are just better suited for the business side of this world, where I think they're more prepared.
I'm on the older side of millennials, but I get your point. And I think part of that is like they kind of lived the transition, like a big transitionary time, right? Where they I'm old enough to where I remember the days before everyone had cell phones. And, I remember a lot of how things used to be, but then I was young enough at the time to grasp all the tech as it was coming out and learn it and get somewhat tech savvy. And so I think my generation was kind of just in that transitionary period where we got to experience both.
Don't hate me, Becky. Boomers to me are the hardest working generation ever. Period. Were they prepared for it? Probably not. They kind of got pushed into having to do a lot of things they probably didn't want to have to do. I mean, boomers but Gen X, I mean, fuck, dude. I mean, we didn't do shit, to be honest. I swear to God,
man, you guys had great music.
We had great music, but we didn't have nobody kind of pushing us around or telling us we had to do this or that. We were just kind of left alone.
We did. Well, I still do what I want to do these days.
Right.
Even in my 50s, mate, I don't give a flying fuck.
Yeah,
you tell me that I can't. You tell me that I can't do something, I'm going to go and fucking do it. I don't care.
I think a lot of that was like rebelliousness from, obviously you can never put, a whole generation in the same box. It's not like all boomers are bad. Not all boomers are good, but, boomers went from like this idealistic, thing and the hippie movement to all of a sudden supporting Reaganomics, which was in my mind about the complete opposite of what they stood for. So that's where they lost me. Sorry, I won't get too.
I mean, we didn't. I just feel like we got away with a lot of shit. Gen X did get away with a lot of shit, and I think that's the reason why I think I raised my kids the way I did.
I still get away with a lot of shit.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I think we're as a generation, we did get away with a lot of shit. We got a lot of freedoms that I think this Gen Z or millennials didn't have.
Well, no, certainly not, because we were in a major transitionary period as certain elements of our life were kind of making a shift, right? So, for example, I made the grandfather clause in Virginia, or DC, I should say, in terms of when I could go to DC and drink. So I made the cut. I could still go to DC when I was 18. And then I had friends that were born a month after me that got hit with the 21 and up, and they were done. Guess who ended up being the one who had to friggin' be the Trojan horse into DC to go buy all the beer for everybody back in Virginia, right? Because in Virginia it was 21 already. So I kind of missed that. So we had our own transitionary period as we were kind of like maneuvering our way through the trappings of life, whether it be smoking or drinking or the drugs that were accessible at the time. I mean, it wasn't opioids back then, like, it wasn't fentanyl and all this crazy shit that's coming into the spectrum now. Vaping wasn't a thing. So I mean,
good acid. We had good acid.
But Matt made a great point earlier in the show when he said, these legislators and senators and heavy hitting politicians can get out and think they're saving the world by banning something or taking it away or making it unattainable by virtue of an age bracket or something like that. And it doesn't matter. But the kid, we still wanted to try it or do it or get ourselves jacked up and fucked up because it sounded like fun, Now we all had some bad experiences with it too. We got busted. Our parents caught us, and some people had it worse. I'm just saying, there's no. You're not. If Matt also said, if it wasn't for vaping, it would be the Tide Pod epidemic or something. Right. You know what I mean? There's always going to be something that they know that they probably shouldn't be doing, that they're going to try to get their hands on, and taking it away, in our case, is actually more detrimental to the culture of people who aren't using it for the same purposes that the kids are trying to use it for.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's the real harm in it, is that I don't want to blame the kids, because the kids are being kids. I'm just saying we're at the face of losing it, which is, on their backs.
Yeah. Well, Matt brought it up too, but we've talked about it before. Eventually, that when this generation of millennials and Gen Z start to move into these higher positions in Washington, I think we'll start to see a little bit more of a change as far as vaping is going to be looked upon differently. And we always talk about, do you feel that these congressmen, these older, let's be honest, most of them are shit in their late 60s, early 70s. Do you ever wonder if they actually listen to these assistants, these people? Because there's a handful of them that are vapors that are in that system, and you have to assume they see these aides that are vaping.
Yeah, I mean, when I've been to DC, I've been in offices where it was like an anti-vaping legislator, and a few of the staff members said, yeah, we vape, or my mom vapes or whatever. So yeah, I think, but it's slow, and again, it's like still like vapors are in the minority. There's less money there, and they're still listening to their donors and stuff like that. So
you see that there, Orange County still. See, I knew that the LA area, they're not going to stop
rebels. But yeah, I think the one thing you got to give this newer generation is when it comes to drugs and social issues, they're pretty damn libertarian, live and let live, when it comes to those types of things. But obviously, people might differ with them on other things because they, lean left on other governmental things or whatever. But so, yeah, I do have a hope for that. And one thing I was going to say is you're right. Gen X did have a transition too, to where, because the 80s were a big transition as well. It was the early tech boom then, and the 80s changed a lot of things. Between the 70s and 90s, there was a lot of change there.
Yeah.
The 80s were very different for a lot of reasons, Matt. And, I lived through it. It went from metal to bands, and then the crossover between bands and electronica. It went then from different industries and a whole different music scene that came out of nowhere. And then the very early 90s, at the end of the 80s, then went into, again, out of California for the most part, the grunge scene appeared.
Washington.
Yeah.
Get your state. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, Washington State. Yeah, all right. I'm sorry, Matt. Fuck's sake. Man, I'm gonna have to reach out to some of my old friends.
But let me ask you something though, Paul and Tim, because I think I've asked you guys this question before on a different show. But do you think you would have survived the 80s if you had been in your 20s already. Because 80s as a teenager was a lot different than an 80s in your mid 20s.
The cocaine was flowing.
Cocaine was a hell of a drug.
Oh, look, if I was in my 20s in the 80s, there's no way in the world, because by the time I was 17, I'd already been into really high grade speed, LSD, shrooms, Quaaludes, smack, all
kangaroo
of it.
meat.
Oh fuck, that's a given. But
sucking the venom out of a fucking spider.
I don't think
Nah,
it was
not
that.
a-
I don't think it was
not
that.
not
that
as
dynamic.
No, dude.
You know how rugged, you know how tough those Aussies are.
Yeah, but for me, it was just learning how to get really high and then go to school or go to university, you know, without, you know, tripping out the teachers. Yeah. But yeah, Washington State, like north of NorCal, as I call it, a lot of the grunge came out of there. But then, like Seattle,
Matt is from the
Seattle, Washington. Yeah,
Matt is from the state that I think your favorite TV show is on, Becky, with the Cowboys. What is that?
Oh
fucking
no,
shit?
I'm not from there though. I live in Montana now.
Yeah.
But I grew up in the I moved here when I was 24, and I grew up in the Seattle area.
Seattle, Washington. Yeah.
Is that where that show? I took a guess, but is that where
What?
that show's recorded? Is she?
Are you talking about Yellowstone?
Yeah, Yellowstone.
Yeah, well, they don't record. They do record parts of it here. I've seen their crew driving around here, but they also record a lot of it in Utah. I think like a lot of like the indoor scenes is in Utah, but then a lot of the outdoor scenes are in Montana.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, for me, John, would I have survived the 80s if I was already in my 20s?
Yeah.
I'm probably thankful that I wasn't in my 20s
Yeah,
going
me
through
too.
the 80s. not that I wouldn't have survived, but I think that it would have probably had a long-term effect on, you know, the things I was able to do in my life when I finally hit my 20s.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for that, but I'm super friggin' glad that I was able to go through the 80s in my teens.
As a teenager,
Yeah.
So the 90s to me just seemed like a hangover of the 80s, and that's why the music was so good. Everybody was depressed, like the money wasn't flowing as well as it was, and fuck it, let's stop taking showers, let's wear some freaking
grunge
shit, and let's just scream in the microphone.
Yeah.
I swear to God, when that all took place, I just I watched the transition of my little cousin in like 2 days go from this beautiful little schoolgirl to this grunge look with black and flannel and fucking pants that three of her could have fit in. You know, it was just like overnight. I was just like amazed.
Well, how do you think the grunge parents felt when goth came around? I mean, their kids had, white makeup on their face and upside down crosses under their eyes and 45 piercings in their face. My parents flipped out just because I had like one earring in one ear.
Yeah.
What's super weird about being a parent right now is that my kids listen to music that's softer than the music I listen to. Like the rap is more produced. There's more auto tune. It's not as angry, most of it. The obviously the rock is kind of like there's not much of a scene, but the rock that's out there. If you listen to an alternative station now, it's not really rock. It's more of like a eclectic mix that's kind of pop and some other stuff. So like it's so weird. I'll put on some punk rock or like some grunge or Nirvana or something, and it's like too hard for my kids. Weird paradigm.
But they're wearing that Nirvana shirt, aren't they?
Oh yeah, that's what's coming back, which is kind of cool and nostalgic to see.
Got that Iron Maiden shirt on.
You're wearing baggy pants again too.
Yeah.
What? I've always worn baggy pants. I'm an old school raver.
Yeah,
but you probably still have the old Jimco's.
I don't mind it because like skinny jean times were not for me. I don't have the body for that, and I think like everyone, especially COVID, like kind of made people lazier and wear baggier clothes again, and that's part of why this is coming back like it is. It seems like.
Yeah. None of my kids listen to any of my music. None. My oldest is in the country. the middle one and the youngest one, they're rap. They just love rap. I just yeah. I mean, I remember I remember that first Eminem CD. My son brought it to me, and we were really non-strict about music at our house. So, but he felt like he needed to have us listen to it first, and I'm like, oh wow, okay. And he's like, you're gonna let me have this, right? I was like, well, you already bought it. I mean, I can't, you bought it with your own money. I go, just listen to it with your headphones on. That was our rule in the house.
Time, but it's a good album. It's shocking at the time, though, for sure.
And get ready for the cyclical generation styles coming back. Flip on TikTok every now and again. Now you're seeing the little young girls in their early 20s now with doing like the Aquanet big hair thing, looking like they walked right off a Sunset Strip and shit. That's coming back.
They're also like buying old, early 2000s digital cameras now and doing like more organic look, they say. Getting more into like retro, they consider retro stuff. You know what? Another thing I'm wondering though with this generation is if we have a really bad economic downturn and like, let's say, some years of shit, kind of like the 90s, where it wasn't like a depression, but just things were kind of correcting. Like, will the music get better? Will they start making angstier music again with a little more emotion and soul to it? I don't know.
Well, I have a feeling punk rock will come back at
punk
some point.
Is making it back,
and I don't mean like the glossed over like mainstream, sellout punk. I'm talking like the hardcore underground punk thing because, and the only reason I'm saying this is because it was heavily
Machine Gun Kelly.
Fuck that guy. Because punk rock in general, and Paul knows what I'm talking about, like Minor Threat, like the really hardcore bands, they were all rooted very heavily in political issue standpoints. And that's kind of in the social atmosphere we're in, and the kids are all hype on it, right?
Yeah.
So once they latch on to that, 1 minute 30-second long song that's aggressive as hell, but they're making a political statement in a short period of time, I guarantee you're going to probably see a bunch of that hardcore. The Mohawks are going to come back, and
I agree with you. I mean, it might morph somewhat because like how every like generation of punk changed a little bit.
Yeah.
Even like the hardcore punk was just if you listen to like an 80s band compared to one that came out in the late 90s or something, but I think that they're especially the pendulum swings, right? And so it seems like lately, the Gen Zers are kind of almost, they're not going to abandon tech, but they're kind of getting sick of it, stuff that's too glossy, and they want more organic, more, something a little more real. So I could totally see like what you were saying, like, a good like political kind of hardcore punk movement happening.
Yeah.
Maybe you should start it, Tim. Maybe you should start it out there.
But I wasn't
Georgia.
There's a whole following coming out of Manchester, Liverpool, out of Scotland. There's a whole new underground scene, and this shit is hard.
Yeah,
it's late 70s, early 80s punk.
Do they vape?
Really.
Most of them do actually, and this is the really strange part. These are all older cats that were right at the tail end of punk throughout Europe and UK, and the shit is really good. And Becky, Dropkick Murphys. Hell yeah.
Murphy.
I think like music is a really good outlet, especially for a teen. And, when they're going through all these tough times and they think no one understands them, their first breakup, or they're fighting with their parents, like, music can be used as like, emotional support in some way. Yeah. And so maybe that'll be helpful. Maybe like music will kind of get its soul back and it'll be helpful for them. And like, I don't know, maybe it'll be kind of healthy. Like maybe there'll be less school shooters. I don't know.
Needs to be some change.
I'm not trying to draw lines there, but it just seems like they need that outlet again that helped a lot of our other generations, and that was music.
Wow. I remember all of these bands, Becky.
You're fucking old, Paul.
Yeah, but I
I'm
actually
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I actually own most of these albums from most of these bands. suicidal tendencies. They were a skate
I,
band.
I'm probably a lot
when I
like
used to skate.
Matt is, but in the Catholic way. I didn't get to listen to a lot of that music because I had strict Catholic parents, and you probably went through
bollocks.
the same thing.
I
Because
had to sneak it. I had to sneak it.
yeah,
Yeah, hell yeah.
I married a Jehovah Witness. So
Oh yeah, that's right. You're
yeah,
talking.
so I gave her her first birthday, her first Christmas, her first everything, just like, and then I remember I said, you know what? I said, just to be nice, let me see what Christmas is like for you guys. And I went to their church for Christmas services or whatever they called it back then. And I was blown away. I was like, what's going on? I said, aren't you guys getting up for communion? Only the ones that are chosen. I go, how do you know?
Oh yeah, that's Passover. That's their
Yeah,
Passover.
Passover.
Yeah.
And I like, well, how do you know? How do you know? You just know. You can tell them. And I said, well, how do you know if you're not lying? You can't. I could just go up there and say, yeah, I spoke to God
You know what
today.
happens in that situation? The most mentally ill people are the ones that think they're
There was
anointed.
like one
That's what I
person that got up out of that whole
I
thing.
met a few people that were anointed, and they were always a bit weird.
Yeah, there was like 200-300 people in there. One person got up to take communion. I was like, wow, that's the only person that's worthy. I was like, that's a little weird.
Yeah, it's a wild cult.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. To me, we'll get back to vaping, but like, I don't know if it's different in your areas, but I don't see any kids vaping around here. I don't know if they're being sneaky about it. Usually you'll see one or two people that are kind of like kids that are kind of like in the parking lot or on their way home from school. They'll hit a vape, but I don't see any kids at all vaping at all.
I'm with you. I rarely see them, and I think that's just society looking down on it, probably
Yeah.
even more so than cigarettes. Because I used to go for walks and smoke cigarettes, behind my parents' back, but I wasn't worried about like being out in public and people seeing it.
Yeah.
I hear from my daughter that a good amount of people at her school vape. I don't know what that is. Obviously, it's anecdotal. It's one school, but they're vaping, but I don't think that they're like doing it outwardly, like we used to. It's also, one thing that's even good when you're an adult is that vaping is obviously easier to hide than smoking. The smell and the smoke,
And it is, you're right, it is expensive, but they find a way. They got jobs now. They got jobs. They're not like us, Gen X. Job. I gotta get a fucking job, man.
Nobody's working anymore. You can't even get the majority of adults to work anymore. What are you talking about?
I swear to God, at the Taco Bell by my house, everyone that works in that Taco Bell is over 30 years old. I don't think I've seen one person that was 16, 17 working at that Taco Bell like it used to be. I used to go there and it was your buddy that worked there. He worked the drive-thru, or your other buddy worked the register.
Yeah.
I'll look through that window of the drive-thru into that Taco Bell and everyone's in their late to mid 30s. Every single one of them.
My daughter has had a job since she was 15, but that's like basically like that's the rule if she wants to drive. She's got to pay. She's got to have some agency in it. She's got to pay for part of her insurance and stuff. But also like she's been able to find better jobs than I could at that age, to where like she was working at Target, until they laid off a bunch of people after Christmas season. She'd do it with seasonal, and they were making like $19 an hour.
Yep.
And her new job working at a beauty supply shop, which she loves, and she makes like $15 an hour. So I think that there are some teens still that are still working, but like there's also, it seems, because there's been a lot of job openings after COVID and stuff, like they're going for like the better stuff if they can.
Yeah,
that's true. I mean, I work in an industry where we're trying to put headcount in warehousing and stuff like that, and I mean the younger generation who are able to walk in the door and apply for those jobs, I mean, they're getting much better pay per hour than it's all relative. I mean, if you go back when we were kids and we were getting paid what we were getting paid, it was relative.
$3.75 an hour.
But we were minimum. A lot of it was minimum wage. But my point is that the kids have options now, because they can walk into one warehouse and they'll make them an offer, and they can be like, screw that, I can go down the street, make $2 or $3 more per hour, and they'll go be able to take that job. It's not like everybody's the same. So
Yeah, and their mentality has changed too, as far as wanting to stay in a certain place for a long period of time. This generation feels like they shouldn't stay anywhere more than 5 years, and it's this constant improvement at different jobs. I like that. If you feel that you have outgrown where you work and there's nowhere else to go, yeah, I can understand
Yeah, as long
making
as
it
you're making improvements,
right.
to yourself and your family and stuff, I think that it could be a good idea. It could be, it just depends on the person.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. I've never heard of it, but of that, until I started talking to some of them, they're like, "Yeah, I don't plan on being here more than 5 years. I'm going to keep bettering myself until I get to where I want to be and feel comfortable." Where our generation was like, "Fuck," I have a buddy that's been working for the same place for 33 years,
Yeah,
and you don't see those numbers anymore.
yeah,
These
it's not
people are
as often
constant.
anymore.
They're constantly jumping around and moving around. It's insane. And their living situations have gotten to be really, really weird. I mean, I've never seen this outburst of people buying used RVs in my entire life. And these are 19, 20-year-old kids. My little nephew just bought himself an RV. He
Mhm.
saved his money for 2 years and he bought himself an RV, moved out of his parents' house into his RV, and has a car too. Parks his RV at an RV place where it's a couple $100 a month to stay instead of paying close to $1,000
Oh
a
yeah,
month for a one
with
bedroom
rent
apartment.
so high, it's like you can't blame them.
Yeah,
It is
it's
it is kind of a cool that whole like van life thing is kind of a cool concept. It
oh
sounds
yeah,
like
that's
something I might
popular.
have done if it was more popular at the
yeah.
time.
I do it
No
now.
thanks.
I would
Not
love
your
it.
thing?
I would
I
love
mean,
it.
it's not like
I
long term, but like think like right after you're out of high school, like doing like if
yeah.
you had the money, doing a road trip like in an RV for a year, I think it would be fun if you had good company, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just close to converting one and just taking all my camera equipment and just drive around the country and taking pictures and just
That's
put a book together. I would love to
that's
do
what
that.
that's what I want to do. Go and fish every river in the US, just for shits and giggles.
Yeah, it'd
Yeah.
be
Just drive around, take photos, and fish every single river that I possibly could in the US.
There you go.
I couldn't have all my LEDs if I had that kind of
You
life.
could fucking you'd have to have some fucking major solar panels to run
Yeah,
all
you
that
could get some
fucking RG.
hardcore solar
Yeah,
panels.
I'm
The
sure
LEDs don't suck too
Yeah,
much
yeah,
anymore.
exactly. Yeah, I freaking that. I'd be
You
going
can
through a
just
red
have
top
that stuff
battery every month.
maxed
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think talking about like the job market, it could get even worse too because obviously like the baby boomer generation is very large and they're
Yeah.
retiring right now, and so I mean there's there should be quite a few
Well,
openings.
our generation is the one that I think we're going to end up. A majority of us are going to end up working into our late 70s, which is
I'll say this about the whole van life kind of thing. Like I know how like the tiny living thing became popular for a little while. People moving into these 300 square foot homes, which had like cool like IKEA crap going on inside of it. But I would certainly be in the ballpark where I'd be like, okay, retirement's hit, and then if I could kind of do the whole sell the farm, get the big
yeah.
RV and just kind of tool around the United States and spend my retirement going to a bunch of places in the upper 48 that I've never even been to.
Oh, for
I-
sure. Yeah, there's tons of places I haven't seen in this country.
Think of all the vape shops you can hit, Tim.
I know. Exactly.
Well,
If they're still around.
well,
Right.
that was another idea that I had. That each state that I go to, each river that I fish at, I do a live show from the RV, and I create
Yeah.
a recipe for that state or for one of the local vape shops, and just leave it there with them.
Oh, that'd be
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
What a great concept, Paul.
What a way to think outside the box, Paul.
Yeah. I'll be your tire changer.
Hey, before any
Really?
CASA news you want to share, Matt?
As long as we can bring the wieners.
Not a lot right now, but there is I believe it's on their Twitter, and that e-cig intelligence
Yeah.
survey would definitely be worth everyone taking.
Yes.
It's a yearly survey, which it'll talk about. Usually a lot of this info can get used to help us like talk about. They'll figure out the percentages of what adults that are vaping what flavors and how often you vape, what product you vape, stuff like that. So that's definitely a survey that's worth taking. Let me just double check and make sure.
They worded some of the questions a lot better than they used to. Some of them you really had to really think really hard before you checked them.
I'll grab the link. Hold on one second.
Okay, yeah, like 9 hours ago, they Kasa tweeted about it.
Yeah. Are they going to share that information with everyone after the survey's done, or?
Yeah, like
I don't remember.
E-Cig Intelligence will like put out the bullet points of, you know, like the main things that you care about, but then like I think they release the full report. Or like I know Kasa gets the full report, and we've quoted from it before as well.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, because I'm trying to think back to before. I don't think I've ever seen any of the results from those polls, and I think that would kind of help people a little, you know, just kind of do it next year or the following year, just so they can see that information. So open your Kasa emails, people. Remember what we told you guys.
That's how I got it. It was in an email.
Kasa should have emailed you as well. And if you're not a member yet, sign up. It's free.
Yeah, it's free. Get on there and open those emails. They know when you don't open an email, guys. They know those numbers. So that's what we were told, right? They know if you're not.
We have them all. Once eggs go a little bit down in price, we're going to egg all your houses.
Yeah, down there.
Yeah, most expensive campaign in history.
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah, and what else you got going on? Anything else? Want to talk about how's your line doing? I still haven't ordered it. How can I get to your flavor?
Oh, the e-liquid line?
Yeah.
It's mostly been sold in Europe and in Canada.
Yeah.
But you know, you could buy it off of, if you're in the States, you can buy it off of Dash Vapes. John, next time I get a batch, I'll send you some too. But I need to get a new shipment.
Yeah, because I always see you guys, you and Paul, and not Paul, you and Phil and Dimitri's got it, but I never see anybody else with it, man. I'm like, where's the picture?
Yeah, it seems to do well in Canada, do well in Europe. We just didn't really like attack the US market hard because of like, you know, the backlash too, because of, you know, Dimmy's been in advocacy for a long time. I've been in advocacy for a long time.
Right.
We didn't want to necessarily like go step on toes, but it doesn't mean it won't be more readily available in the States at some point. But you can easily buy it from Dash Vapes.
And we all know that Phil's is the number one flavor, the peach watermelon.
I do love that flavor. I'll give him that, and that's my go-to. I have so many empty bottles of that around. That's my go-to in the summer. It's my summertime vape.
He makes sure everybody knows it's number one.
Son of a bitch. Yeah, it's not the number one selling. Your flavor, I still need to try. I've tried Phil's variant. Yeah, okay, point taken. But
it's a bit. Well, how are you vaping it? Are you vaping it mouth to lung or in more of like a billet box style device? AIO
billet box.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like we created it for like pod systems, refillable pod systems, and MTL tanks. You know, so like the flavor might have been a little light if you use it for direct lung compared to like some others.
No. In my billet, when I'm running that, I've got a what is it? 1.2. Yeah, I built a 1.2.
Okay, so you got like more of an MTL setup going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it might just be because billet box's flavor isn't as good.
Yeah.
No, it's not that. It's probably
that's something that I say in some of my reviews, but they're getting better. But like the billet boxes, I love them. They're super cool looking. But the vape experience, like, you know, if you use a bridge with some coils you usually use in a tank, it's usually not as good as you use in that tank because it has a longer chimney. You're farther away from your coil. That's my experience.
Yeah.
No, this one I'm actually using a Nautilus coil in it. So no, this is actually a really good setup the way I've got it now. I'm running the 0.4 and the 0.7 BVCs, but I really wish that some of the products that you used to review, like the Sense, some of those coils would come back into the marketplace, or we could use them in these bridges.
I think Sense is just about out. They've made some. I think that they own Vape Lustion as well, and they've made a few products under that line. But it would be cool to see them come back.
No, I'd love to see those coils for bridges.
Oh,
Because
for bridges.
those coils were on fucking
Yeah,
point
I get
with
what you're saying.
flavor.
Yeah.
Oh man, were they on point?
Becky, Matt's younger than us. He's got better hearing. He doesn't need headphones. I tried to do the
I
show
have
without.
headphones, honestly, my head's just so big that my over ear headphones, it's uncomfortable, man. It squeezes my fat dome.
You need to go get those fucking. They got a set. I forget who makes them. AKA, I think makes.
No, it's AKG and
AKG. I have
and
Samson.
No, Audio Technica.
The big,
really good cans.
The big cans. All right,
Yeah.
Matt. Anything else you want to throw out there before we head on out of there? Anything else with your other your other what do you want to call it? Timmy, give me the word.
Endeavor.
Not really. I think we covered everything. If anybody out there is interested in the cannabinoids that we were talking about earlier, feel free to email me. It's Matthew, MATTHEW at singlesourced, so ED at the end of it, singlesourced.com.
Yeah, you could put it in there too in the chat if you want to type it in there. And then that will be in there. I was going to get that info from you. Then I got attacked with grandchildren today, so they came in flocks.
Little shits is what I call them. That's all I've been calling kids.
Hey, I just sugar them up and send them on their way.
That's the way to do it when you're a grandpa. That's how you pay the kids back.
That's it. Once they get to about 2.5, 3, they're allowed to drink espresso in my house. So that's just how it works. Yeah, look at all my grandkids, dude. They're sipping on espresso. Yeah,
I can't wait to have grandkids. They're gonna just so spoiled and dirty when you get sent back home to their parents' house.
That's it. All right, guys. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Matt, for joining us. Always nice having you on the show with us. We'll see everybody next week. Not sure what we're going to talk about, but we're gonna
have a doctor with us.
Yeah, you're gonna have a doctor next week. A real doctor.
I concur, doctor.
I concur, doctor.
I concur. I concur.
Doctor. Don't start that shit. All right. Again, thanks again, Matt, for joining us.
Thank you.
Always good to have you on here. Everybody, we'll see everybody next week. Peace.